Welcome to Behind the Book. It's time now for Behind the Book, hosted by Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion, two authors with a passion for books, no filters, and limitless curiosity. Join them now to find out the real story behind your favorite books and authors. And now, Behind the Book.
Welcome to another episode of Behind the Book. I'm here with my co-host Karen.
You certainly are.
What's the haps out in Wisconsin?
You know, I want to go on record as saying I am not pleased, and this is on behalf of all the Karens worldwide. We are not happy that our name has become a pejorative. And I kept thinking it would die down at some point, this Karen business. And it seems to have just, if anything, gotten worse. And it just makes me so sad because, you know, I don't know any terrible Karens. And yet now that's the label for all terrible women. So, you know, I'm just saying, I'm putting it out there. And, you know, I grew up in an era of Debbies and Lindas and Susans and Kathy and Stacy's and some of them aren't that great, honestly. But but I would never choose their name, you know?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, it's unfortunate that it's somehow gotten attached to the name Karen. I mean, we obviously don't condone people who act like that, but it's, you know, if it was my name, it would bristle me every time that I heard it.
And now you're a little younger than I am, quite a bit younger. You keep saying we're the same age, which is so nice of you. But you're younger. So did you grow up in the Jessica Jennifer era? Is that you?
Yeah. Jessica, Jennifer, Chrissy. There are a lot of Chrissies. I can't think of
Christine, Kristen?
Yeah. Christine, Kristen, Chrissy. I can't think of anything else. Those were probably the three biggest ones. Actually, not Jessica so much. That was a little bit later, I think, but definitely a lot of Jennifers. I mean, I know so many Jennifers to this day that it's like, okay, I've got a Jen, I've got a Jenny, I've got a, you know, It's like, it's a really popular name.
Well, and that was sort of Jennifer Garner's and Jennifer Lopez. They're kind of in that age group as well. Did you have any Nicoles?
No, not that I can think of. But, you know, I grew up in a strange area where we had, it was a timber community, but we had a huge hippie commune. And so a lot of my friends were the children of these hippies that had come there in the early, you know, late 60s, early 70s. And so we had a willow and a leaf and a forest.
Really?
So we had really some different names in a lot of places.
Well, see, I grew up in Wisconsin in a very conservative area. So the boys were Jeff and John and Mark and David, and the girls were Susan and, well, all the ones I listed before. And now it seems like for a while there was the era of last names as you know, Mackenzie and Dakota. And I think it's funny because every generation feels like they want to do something different. And then you pick a different name, and before you know it, you look around and there are others that had the same thought.
Oh, yeah. I thought I was so clever with Ella because she's 18, and I didn't know any Ellas. And now it's like everywhere I look, there's Ellas. And it's like a couple years later than my Ella. And so I always tell her that she's a trendsetter.
She started it.
Yeah.
She set off the Ella trend.
Yeah.
But you also have an Emerson. Is that a common name? I don't think so.
Well, it's a common boy's name, apparently, which I didn't really think about. But I can remember when I told my mom we were naming her Emerson, the first thing out of her mouth was, "Isn't that a boy's name?" I was like, oh, this is why you don't tell people before the baby's born and you've actually baptized them already.
But she was right.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's still very uncommon. I've hardly ever heard it. But at our church, our former church in our old neighborhood, there were two sisters that were Ella and Emerson. And their last name was very similar to ours, too. And I could not, they were a little bit younger than my girls, but I couldn't believe it. I thought, what are the coincidences? You know, what are the odds of that?
Really unusual, you would think.
Yeah.
But life is stranger than fiction, they say.
Yes, it is.
So,
yes.
Well, you
anyway,
know, I have a good friend who named her son Hayden. And her mother said, if I recall this correctly, I don't think I can get used to that. So she told her ahead of time what she was going to name him. And she said, she told her mom, you're going to have to get used to that. It's his name. And he's an adult man now. He's Ben Hayden. It's worked out fine. But you're right. People love to give their thoughts on that.
Oh, yes. All right. Well, we had a really interesting guest during this episode. He's a librarian in this small town in Wisconsin, which is fascinating to me. And you actually know him.
I met him at a conference a number of years ago, and he was very kind to me and funny, very personable. And so we invited him to tell us all about what goes on behind the scenes at the public library. So it was fun to talk to him.
Yeah, now I want to set one of my books in a small town in Wisconsin and have the main character be a librarian. Because it's like a town of 700 people. That's just ripe for small town romance.
I love it. Yeah. Definitely you should do it.
Enjoy the show.
Today we are delighted to have Kent Bernard with us. Kent has had a fascinating life. He served 4 years in the U.S. Navy, attaining Mess Management Specialist Second Class and cooking aboard the USS America CV-66 for 2 years. Other jobs included managing restaurants, working in sales, and serving as a barista. It wasn't until he began doing story time at Borders in Cincinnati that he decided working with children was for him. He earned his master's degree in library science in 2011 and has worked for the last 10 years as the director of the public library in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. Welcome, Kent.
Thank you.
Do you remember when I first met you?
Yes.
I have a very clear memory of it. It was at the conference for the Wisconsin Library Association, and I remember I was really nervous. I was their speaker, and they had a lunch first, and we were sitting around a round table where I didn't know anyone, and everybody was saying what library they worked at. And then it came to be my turn, and I said, I don't work in a library. I'm an author who's giving this talk. And I admitted I was very, very nervous. And Kent said, Tess, I don't think I even told you this. He said, well, you don't need to be nervous. You're talking to librarians about books. You really can't go wrong.
That's awesome.
Oh, I don't remember that, but I remember having lunch with you and then loving the talk and
Well, you put me at ease, and I've always remembered that.
That's nice.
So thank you for that. You mentioned all your whole background and your current job, and I'm kind of wondering, once you got your master's in library science, and then you went to get a job in your chosen field, how does that work? What interview questions do they ask, and what were they looking for?
That's interesting. So I came from restaurants, and restaurants you interview with, generally speaking, the general manager of the restaurant and then possibly the district manager or the other way around, to see if you'll fit in with the corporate people. And so in libraries, I learned that all of a sudden you interview with 5 people or 6 people. So they were looking for someone who was able to take the library to the next step, which is, kind of into the future. They'd had a woman who worked here for 32 years. I'm only the 4th librarian here in Wild Rose, and the library has been here almost 100 years. So that's pretty good. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I'm not going to live to be 32 years here. So they wanted someone who had some tech experience, and I was coming from, at the time, Barnes & Noble, and I had moderately good tech experience because I grew up with computers. One of the first people to have a laptop in a company I worked for when I was in food sales. But it was interesting because I drove up to Wild Rose, and I had kind of a little dinner with a friend of mine who was the children's librarian in Oshkosh, and what I had really wanted to be was a children's librarian. So every class I took was aimed at that. So I didn't have any experience with any of the public library directorship. So I got here, and I got out of my car, and I was like, oh, well, this is, nice. And I'm putting on my suit jacket, and this woman comes running out, and she says, are you Kent? And I said, yes, because who else would be putting on a suit in Wild Rose at something like, 7 o'clock at night? And I came in, and she had been sitting in a chair in the library waiting for me to come in one of the doors so she could, say hi. And she said, well, they're over there waiting for you because the library is connected to the community center. And so I said, well, I'd like to see the library first. So I walked in, and it's not a large library, but it's really nice for a village of 710 people. And I walk down, and I get to the end where the reading room is, which was the original library, and there's coffee and tea and water and all kinds of baked desserts that they made. And I was like, oh, okay. And she said, oh, do you want something to eat? And I was like, well, no. I said, I just like to use the restroom and, wash up and get ready for the interview. And she's like, oh, okay. And I said, I will take a water. And so she said, well, they're waiting right across the hall, right in that door. And I was like, okay. And I said, well, how many people are there? She said, oh, there's 12. And I was like, oh, 12. Because I had never interviewed with that many people at a time before. I went and I washed up and I came out and my tie was straight and everything. And I walked in and I said, well, I suppose you're wondering why I've called you all here today. And so they laughed, and so we had a little laugh, and there was 7 people at one table, a big long table. There were 4 people at another round table, and there was one guy all by himself over by the door on the other side of the room. And I was like, okay, well, this is weird. Is this set up so that I'm supposed to make eye contact? You're wondering in your mind, what kind of a trap is this? And it went very well. I found out that the guy by himself actually was sick, and so that's why we interviewed like that. And the 4 people at the round table were the librarians, so they got to hear what I had to say. So we got along, and then we all had a little baked good together afterwards. And I walked outside and I looked up and I heard the wind in the pine trees, and you could see the stars. And I said, this is really nice. I like it here.
All right. So your job titles in the libraries include librarian, library director, library clerks. Can you tell us the difference between the titles and their duties?
It depends on who you talk to in the library world. Some people, especially at larger libraries, consider that librarians are only the people with the degrees, and nobody else counts as a librarian except for those people that have a master's like I do. And a lot of people at small libraries, especially Wisconsin has 360 libraries, and something like 300 of them at least are small libraries where they're either part-time or they're full-time, but the library director does not have to have a degree in library science, just a bachelor's, and then you have to complete some coursework.
Is there a certain personality type that's drawn to library work?
It's a lot different than it was, I think. I think a long time ago it was kind of just the more studious book type people that like to read books. But all kinds of people are librarians, and I think mostly they're all outgoing and tech savvy, and they have big personalities. There are still some shy people, but you really need to get along with people, and so I think that's one of the things, is if you can get along with people and you can talk to them, and that's really one of the big things.
So libraries were once primarily about books, but now they serve as the hub of the community. Can you tell us about all the programs and services provided nowadays?
Gosh, it's changed so much. When I was a kid, you went in, you got a book, you were quiet. Now I have music playing. In the old days, before COVID, we would have coffee and cookies out. But mostly we're still about entertainment and information, but now you'll find us lending all kinds of different things. Like we happen to offer rubber stamps, baking pans. We have a couple different projectors. We have a movie screen you can check out. I know other libraries have a Silhouette or a Cricut machine they'll lend out, telescopes, fishing gear, tools. It's more a library of things. And plus we spend a lot of time teaching people about technology or using technology. Gosh, everything.
I can remember, and this was the same occasion when I met you, that somebody at the table was talking about having 3D printers at their particular library. And one librarian said, but the problem with that is all the people that use them to make facsimiles of weapons and sex toys. Oh. And I sat there with my mouth dropped open, people go to the library and do that? Yeah. They were like, oh yeah, you would be surprised. I was like, oh, libraries are clearly not what I was thinking they were. You know what, Kent, you are in a unique position to answer a question I have long wondered.
Okay.
When you go in the library and you see the area that has the new books, and it seems like they're constantly updating it, there's new books, new volumes. How do you determine which books you're going to buy?
Everyone who buys a little bit differently. A lot of people use the regular avenues, I call them, like Library Journal, library or School Library Journal, the Hornbook, New York Times, Ingram's. They look at those reviews and lists, and I do look at them every now and then. I mostly listen to my patrons. I use the New York Times bestseller list a lot, but I know because we're small, and I know most of the people that come in here, I'm not up front a lot, but I know most of the people and what they like, or else my staff will tell me. But I like to use Goodreads. Moms will tell me at story time, oh, I saw this really cool book, and, so I may get that. Other librarians will recommend titles, and I pay attention to what authors I know my patrons like, and I know what goes out, what circulates, because that's the most important thing to us.
Once the books arrive, what has to be done before they can be placed on the shelves?
So they're prepped and cataloged, meaning we have to assign them a barcode, and then we look up their bibliography, enter them in the computer, put the spine labels on, cover them, and then scan them in ready to be checked out. It's easier than it sounds a lot of times, because if another library already has that book, we can just piggyback on their bibliography entry, and then we'll catalog it the same way. So it really only takes... Actually, the hardest part is putting the covers on, the plastic covers, and I can't do it. I can't do it very well at all. And so I have three staff that can do it, and they do it. It's not as easy as it looks. We have access to something called WCTS. 3 of the county libraries, or libraries in those 3 counties, will ask them to catalog and cover books for them. So if there's something we can't find, we send it to them, and they have a really cool machine. And the books, there's a little pouch, and you slip one end of the pouch in, and you see how big it has to be on the other side. And you take the book back out, and you put it in the machine, and it hot seals it so that it makes a little jacket for it. And it's really nice, but they're also too expensive for us to own. It's like $2,000. So, but mostly we just have to assign them a barcode and put them in the computer, and then bing, they can go out.
Now, you talked about purchasing new books. For self-published authors and authors published by small presses who would like to get into libraries, is there a way they could get on your radar?
Well, there is. But this is the hardest question. As you know, Erin and I, my wife, we did a book together, Mom Needs a Dinosaur. And then because we self-published it, we have a publishing company, so to speak. And we just had Rhino and Dino and Juice, which is Erin's first book. We printed it at a really nice printer, so it's a higher quality book. And so we have the same marketing problems everyone else who self-publishes. So it's exceptionally hard as a self-published author to sell books. I mean, there's still a stigma surrounding self-publishing, and part of it is it's a bad rap, because back when self-publishing first became bigger and everybody could kind of do it, there was a lot of bad books being out there. I mean, I would download them on my Nook, and I'd go, oh, what did I get? But they were they were free or something. And honestly, there's still a lot of bad books. And it's too bad, because there are also a lot of really good books. So we see it changing a little, like the better material is written and self-published, but it's still a stumbling block to a lot of people. And not to put my librarian friends down, but a lot of old school librarians just won't even look at it. They don't believe there's anything that could possibly be self-published that's good. So now, having depressed all the self-published authors out there, or maybe just reinforced the fears they have, let me say this. I believe that if you email librarians or stop in, but if you email them with a link to your book on your website or any of the big sellers, and you know who I mean, Amazon, Borders, Books A Million, any of those, it will work about 25% of the time. And since I've self-published myself, I'm way more interested in authors' emails. But it has to be kind of like a query letter, in that it has to be interesting. It has to grab my attention. It has to make me think, do my patrons will check this out? Will they do it? Because circulation, most people don't know this, but circulation is the biggest factor in how libraries are funded. And I hate to say it, but I'm really not as interested in reviews from the sources that I know are paid for, like the Horn book. Oh, what's the other one? I can't think of it now. But I usually look up, if an author sends me something, I'll look it up on Goodreads, or I'll try to read reviews that I can find online from real people like my patrons that are going to check the book out.
I have heard, and some of my readers have asked specifically if they would order my books, and they have done it. So I think that's another way. I always tell folks who ask, "Oh, I really want it in my library because I can't afford to buy it," and I say, just call them up or email, and they usually will order it. So
that's true.
That's another option. So most people know that libraries call their main bookshelves the stacks, which I love. Is there other library lingo you can share with us? What's the insider scoop?
I wish I knew all of it. Well, there's circs or circulation circs, and that's how many items we checked out. Like, it's how we get paid. I bet in large libraries there's other things that I don't know about, but we're just a little library, and they don't teach you in library school, so they don't say, "Oh, and this is the secret words you need to know."
He doesn't want to tell us the secret words.
Yeah,
I think that's what
not allowed to. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you.
All right. Well, if you can't tell us the secret words, I have a random question for you.
Okay.
I used to do this game when I was a server waiting tables, and I would try to predict what somebody would order off the menu, just because I'm interested in people and it was something to occupy my mind. Are you able to predict what sort of books people like when they walk in?
Well, sometimes you think you will. It's kind of a hard question to answer here, only because I know so many of the people that come in and what they read. There are other people that have surprised us. Some guy comes in and you're like, "Oh, tattoos." He's not going to, and he goes right over to like the romantic like books, and you're like, "Really? You're going to check out the Amish love books?" Okay, well, that's interesting.
Good for him.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I have other people that you would, older women, and when 50 Shades of Grey came out, I wasn't really here yet, and the other librarian didn't bring them in because of what they were, I would guess. And these little old ladies will come in and say, "I want to read this book. It's something about 50 Shades of Grey or something." And you're like, "Oh, yeah, I'll have to order that for you from somewhere else." And you're going, "Okay, Grandma, no, I'm going to go home." Because you're thinking, "Oh, it's my grandmother reading this." But we don't judge. I mean, I had a teenager the other day ask me for the same book. And I said, and one of my staff just like looked at me. When she left, she said, "I can't believe she wants to read that." And I said, we don't judge on what people want to read. Mm-hmm. And, she can read it. She's old enough. I'm sure she sees things on the internet that are way worse than what's in that book.
For sure. Yeah. And I always say, if people are reading a book, then that's great. I don't care what they read. If it's something they like, yes, then it supports what we all do. So,
during the pandemic, I noticed that libraries did at least the one in my community, did an excellent job in just pivoting in order to keep serving the community. They had, you had pick up at the door, you could order your books ahead of time, you could either call or email, depending on your preference. How did you handle it at your library?
So we did what a lot of people did, and we put a table out in our foyer. We didn't really run out to people's cars. We would if you really couldn't walk in. You could just call us and we would bring your stuff out to you. But we did put a table in our foyer and then put holds on it so you could just come out, pick up your holds, and go.
What's one misconception you'd like to clear up about your job?
Oh, people think that all we get to do is read books at work. And how I wish that was true. We all wish all we had to do was sit around and read books all day. But people are always, when you say you're a librarian, they go, "Oh, it must be so nice to read all those books." And you're like, I don't have time to read books. I do read a lot of emails. I mean, I spend most of my day looking at emails or thinking of ways to do new programs or watching. There's a really cool group on Facebook called the Programming Librarians Interest Group. And it's just people from all over the country and programs they do. And the stuff they do just amazes me. And so people just take their ideas all the time. But there are some libraries that will let people read books. If they're running the book club, then it's part of their job. But they don't get to do it for 8 hours a day. They do it, an hour or two, whatever. And you still probably read it at home. But people think that all we do is read. It'd be great.
In an ideal world, that would
In an ideal world.
Now, I know you're a member of the Wisconsin Library Association, and you're also, I believe, a member of the American Library Association.
I was in college because you could join both for like $50. And then ALA was really kind of too expensive for a small library person. If I really pushed, I'm sure my board would say I could pay for it. But and there is a lot about it. Like you get a lot of things from it. Like they stand behind you and do things, but they would do that anyway. WLA allows me to meet other like-minded people, and I get credit for continuing education when I go to a conference or tech seminars. I have a good time meeting other librarians, and I've been the chairman of the WHISTLE group, which is the Wisconsin Small Libraries, and those people are a hoot. It's kind of like I played trombone in the high school and the college band, and trombones are always the fun ones. And WHISTLE is like the trombone section of the library world. It's even more fun than YSS, which is the youth group. So we just like to have a good time.
If someone wants to support their local library, how would you suggest they go about it?
You know, one of the best ways you can do that is to be a really good voice for your library. Talk up the library, use it, and tell people what you get from it, all the things they can do there. Some people are sometimes amazed that we have DVDs, and I'm like, why are you going to the Red Box, and spending money when you could be checking out a new DVD here? If there's a meeting coming up at the village, well, I say village board, but city council, whatever it is, and it's about funding, you might want to go and say what the library does for you. You could also join the library board, join your friends group. Friends do a lot of fundraising. They really have paid for a lot of things for us here. And you can always just stop in and ask your local librarian, what do you need? What can I do to help? A lot of libraries will put up like a little want tree, or they'll put it on Amazon, things they want. But my friend in Monona, down by Madison, she had a little tree and it had little slips on it, and it would say, this is the book they want to buy. And if you'd like to buy it, you give us the money, and then they order it. So it was a nice thing they did.
So when you do get a chance to read, what kinds of books do you enjoy reading?
So someone once told me that men read for knowledge and women read fiction, and that's not true. We all read both. But right now I'm reading Ready Player One because I'm fascinated to see how different it is from the movie, which I saw first. I'm also reading this book called Grimhouse by somebody you know. Just because I have the voices in my head, and I really like that book, Karen. I can't help it.
Oh, that makes me so happy.
It's so much fun. We actually saw a movie the other night, and Aaron said, that's kind of like Grimhouse, isn't it? And I said, yeah, I bet they stole it from Karen.
We'll have to talk
here first. Yeah.
That's right.
We'll have to talk after we're done recording, and you can tell me the name of that movie.
Well, if I can remember, Aaron will remember more than I will. And then nonfiction, right now I'm on a Frank Lloyd Wright mid-century modern kind of kick. So I've read a book that his wife wrote, and what a fascinating man. My God, he was so intelligent. But I also have a really big thing about the Civil War. I've been reading a lot on the Civil War. I had to take a break from it because I reread Michael Shara's Gods and Generals, not Gods and Generals, the one after that, and the one about Gettysburg that they based the movie on. And I've read it so many times that I said I really should take a break from this. And then I have some guilty pleasures. I like Edward Rutherford, even though he's really involved and very historical. My guilty pleasure for reading is Janet Ivanovich because she's like brain candy. You can just kind of read it and not think a whole lot about it, because it's just fun.
You have other creative endeavors outside of your job. What are you working on now?
I'm really working towards voiceover work. I've taken some courses on it, and I have all the equipment to start recording audiobooks. And then I have a couple of picture books that I started a long time ago, and one may actually turn into a juvenile novel. One is one that my mom, before she died, she asked me, she said, why don't you write a book about popcorn? And I said, well, okay, I will. And I did. And then I tried to change it up, and I think I've lost the very first version, which is actually the best. So I'm going to kind of try to come back around to that one. And then I just have too many committees I'm on in the village. The Red Mill, there's just too many things I do. I need to retire so I have time to do all the things I want to do.
All right. At the end of every show, we do a little fun rapid fire questions. So we are going to do that today if you're up for it.
Okay.
What is one food that will never get past your lips?
Oh, God, I love food, having been in the restaurant business, but you know those little baby ducks inside the eggs that they eat over in Asia countries? I could not do that. I don't know how they do that. You've seen that, right? Where they have it's an egg and there's a duck already in it, and then they eat the duck baby. It's so gross.
That is disgusting, and I have never heard of that.
Oh, they made him do it on Survivor once when I used to watch Survivor, and I was like, oh, God, so gross.
Who would you want to play you in a movie?
Oh, I think Ryan Reynolds would be perfect because we're so much alike. We're both dashing and funny, and he'd have to gain about 100 pounds.
Well, actors do that for certain roles, so yeah. You could ask him. Yeah. What superpower would you pick given the opportunity?
See, now if you'd asked me that when I was like 16, I would say X-ray vision. But now I think everybody says this, but I think flying would be the coolest thing because there's so many other things. And I told my wife this, and she said, "Oh, magic," and I was like, "Oh yeah, but is that a superpower? But that would be great because then you could do anything." But yeah, I would say flying. I think it'd be fun.
You've already kind of answered this, but what's your biggest guilty pleasure?
Oh, well, yeah, there's chocolate, and then I really like rom-com movies. I'm a big sap, and I cry about everything, like those ads with the puppies, and then there's like the AT&T ads where he comes home, he just called to say he loves us, and the Budweiser ads with the little horses. Oh, gosh. I'm crying right now. I'm tearing up just thinking about him. That's awful. My wife just goes, "Stop it. I can't help it."
What's the worst job you've ever had?
The worst job, well, as in working and getting paid, the worst one was I was a dishwasher and then a cook at this truck stop, and I had to clean the women's room, the ladies' bathroom, and I could never have imagined women would be that dirty and disgusting. I won't even tell you the things I saw.
Yeah, please don't.
It's a PG show. If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be?
I think it would be retiring on very little money.
Good answer.
That is a good answer, yeah. What's your favorite scent?
Thanksgiving turkey dinner. I love the smell of turkey and the whole dinner thing. So, yeah.
What's the most terrifying thing you've ever done?
You know the movie Stand By Me, where they're on the bridge and the train is coming? We were once, when we were little, and I'm little meaning like 10 years old, walking across a railroad bridge in my hometown, Menominee. And then we heard the train whistle, and we were like, we didn't know this was still an active track. And we ran. It wasn't really as close as the movie, but I'll tell you, when you hear a train coming and you're on a railroad bridge and all you can look down and see water, and you're going, I think we can make it across, and you're thinking, okay, I wonder if you can lay down in the middle of the tracks and the train won't hit you like they do in the movies. So, but we made it. But boy, it was really something I wouldn't want to do again.
Yeah, and something that stuck with you all your life, probably.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about it until you asked me that. So,
what's one thing you're really bad at?
Lying. I can't lie. I can't play poker. I get this silly little grin on my face when I try to lie. You know that the American president, she says, "You're doing that thing with your face, Andy." It's my wife will always ask me something. She'll just stare at me, and I'll go, "No, I didn't do it." And I'm trying to like turn my head so she can't see my face, and she's like, "You're lying to me." And I was like, "I'm not lying." I can't. It's awful. I wish I could.
If you could live your life over again, would you want to?
I'd want to start after high school because I wouldn't want to go to high school now. It seems like it's worse than when we were kids. So there's two things. First, I would have stayed working in radio, I think, and worked as a voiceover artist, preferably in animation, because I never thought you could make money doing that. I thought that was like, well, you know, the one guy, Mel Blanc, does all the voices, so there's no other jobs. Or second, in ninth grade, I wanted to become an architect until I found out there was a lot of math in it. But I would have loved to been an architect and design homes the way Frank Lloyd Wright can, because that would just be amazing. But I don't want to go back to high school. I want to know everything I know and then go back.
But not going back to high school, I think a lot of people can connect with that.
Oh, gosh. I can't imagine.
I have a high schooler, and I think she would currently say she would rather not be there at the moment. But
I imagine that's true.
Yeah. Well, Kent, thank you so much for being on the show, and we'll look forward to keeping up with all your different interests as we go on here.
Thank you very much. It was fun.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Behind the Book, brought to you by authors Tess Thompson and Karen McQuestion. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and post a question in the comments section. This has been Behind the Book.